get going. Right. Okay. So all of you have been associated with Compaid for a number of years. So I'm not going to do too much of a preamble about the organisation. As you know, as well as digital skills training, which we're going to be talking about today, we've also got quite a large accessible community transport service that runs around Kent as well. But we're not focusing on that for the purposes of today's presentation. As most of you are aware, Compaid was founded 35 years ago now by Lorna Ridgway, who was an educationalist, quite a noted educationalist in the 60s and 70s, who saw the potential for disabled people to use personal computers as personal computers came into the home in the mid-80s. So initially, Lorna's work was based at a local care home in Tunbridge Wells, but the charity soon expanded and needed separate premises and became constituted as Compaid, the charity that you know and love today. 10 years ago, we relocated to Paddock Wood, a smaller town than Tunbridge Wells, but just about 7 miles down the road from Tunbridge Wells. And we took over an industrial unit and we fitted it out as a fully accessible training centre for disabled adults and other individuals to come along each day to learn different skills and undertake creative projects. And before the pandemic came along, we were supporting around 60 disabled adults each week. Some people coming for perhaps 2 or 3 days a week, who would be supported one-to-one with either a staff member or a volunteer. So everybody learns skills and pursues their interests at their own pace. So we're not a classroom environment where everybody does the same thing at the same time each day. Everybody does something different depending on what they would like to learn that day. But on top of as well as the training centre, we've also got an expanding outreach team. So that's supporting individuals in their own homes or in care homes or local community centres right across Kent and into the Medway towns as well. And that's been working over the last few years with disabled people, older people, and people with complex needs as well. And before COVID came along, we were supporting around 500 people each year through some means through our digital skills training services. But of course, when the pandemic started to affect the whole country back in March last year, our face-to-face support had to be suspended very rapidly. We had something like 2 days, I think, to change the way that we were delivering. So I'll now invite our training services manager, who's here with us today, Val Sprott, who will explain a bit more about how our services did change at that time.
Hello, thank you very much, Stephen, and hi to everybody. So as the training services manager for Compaid, I'm the line manager for the training centre coordinator. He's got a dedicated team of staff and volunteers reporting to him, but I'm also the line manager for the outreach training services team, and this is currently staffed by 4 contract trainers. All our support's entirely based around the individual and tailored to their needs and aims. Sessions are informal in tone and take place at the individual's own pace. Our clients, both in the centre and in the local and the wider community, are from a pretty diverse variety of backgrounds and ages, and they live with an equally diverse range of cognitive and physical disabilities and difficulties. Recently, as you can probably understand, mental health has become a major player in the wake of the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. During the pandemic, the training service that Compaid offers hasn't just survived. In fact, they've actually grown. Throughout this time, our centre training team supported about a third of our current centre clients with regular one-to-one remote-based IT sessions. So that was a third, but the rest of the centre clients received regular phone calls, texts, and newsletters, which helped to keep them connected. Although the centre itself's now reopened with phased returns of clients, these introduced services continue to support those who can't return for some reason at present. Where we've also seen a big surge is in the community, in the need for our one-to-one remote IT sessions. Um, it's been recognised that IT plays a hugely important role in reducing isolation, improving mental health and well-being, as well as enabling people to be more independent and generally up to date. Um, it's become obvious actually during the pandemic just how important it is for people to be connected in some way. And the increasing demand that we're experiencing very much reflects this. We've set up new projects for the provision of such IT support and training to individuals in the community via Job Centre Plus, housing associations, local council and other partner organisations. Prior to the pandemic, these kinds of training sessions provided were face-to-face. These temporarily became remote sessions, using, for example, Zoom. And now we offer a blended approach of remote and face-to-face. This has actually widened our reach to clients who are too far away or too incapacitated to travel to one of our locations. Thanks to a special one-off grant, we're also fortunate enough to be able to loan out Amazon Fire tablets to those who wouldn't be able to take part in remote sessions because they don't have the equipment at home, which quite a lot of people don't. And we can also supply mobile broadband if they don't have internet. Some people, many people have smartphones, even if they have nothing else. But many people aren't getting the best out of them, and we can help them with this as well. Speaking for myself, I'm personally very hopeful and excited for the future. I believe Compaid will continue to increase its contribution and support to the local and the wider community, whether it's face-to-face at our centre, at hubs in the community, or via remote sessions, whichever option or blend of options is felt to be more practical and desirable. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight as to what we've been doing. And I'd very much now like to introduce you to my colleague Val Coombs, who's one of our brilliant Compaid Centre trainers, who's been working with clients, especially during this lockdown period. Thanks, Val, over to you.
Right. Hi, good afternoon. My name's Val and I'm a trainer here at the centre, as Val just said. I've been here for rather a long time now and still love every day that I come to work here. I'd like to talk about three very different clients that I worked with during lockdown. The first being a lady called Jane, who's 69. She lives alone. She got cerebral palsy and unfortunately now is living with cancer. We are really her lifeline. She lives in a supported living flat, as I say. She doesn't really see that many people, especially during lockdown. She hadn't been out for 14 months. So my calls 2 days a week meant the world to her. Jane absolutely loves artwork and, in her own words, is uncoordinated and makes an awful mess with her paints if she tries to use paints and jars of water, etc. So painting using the computer with a mouse has opened up a whole new world to her. You'll see behind me that can you see the tree behind me, which is a charcoal drawing that Jane did. And we had it printed onto canvas, which we have done with a number of our clients' paintings. She produces some wonderful artwork. And I asked her I told her what I was doing. And she said, please thank everybody at Compaid for every morning I have something to get up for. And it truly gives me so much pleasure. So I think that says it all, that we change her days. The next girl I'd like to talk about is Gemma, and she's 38 and she has learning difficulties, very, very different to Jane. She's been coming to us for about 3 years now. These are her words. Compaid has helped me so much since my mum died. She lost her mum about 4 years ago, I think. It's been very, very lonely, as you can imagine. Since lockdown, it's even been harder. So we gave Gemma a laptop that she uses in the centre, and I work with her twice a week. We did so many different things during that time. We did projects, especially about Paddock Wood, where she lives, and about the hop picking. And she was most interested in what used to happen when people came down from London, etc., which obviously we all know. She does simple programming, game programming. She works on ancestry, which has opened a whole new world for her, finding about her ancestors. And she also paints and does the artwork. And she says her favourite painting is a painting that we did together of Cornwall, Polzeth in Cornwall, where she used to go on holiday with her mum. And she now has that printed and it's on her wall at home. So that means an awful lot to her. And I asked her again, just for one quote about Compaid. And she said, I feel that Compaid is my family. And I just think that is a wonderful thing. And we are like a family here to everyone. The third person I like to talk about is Connor. Connor is 25 and he's been with us for about 3 years, I think. And he has autism. He's terribly quiet, but he's a clever lad and he's very, very into music. And we have got an iMac computer here and we use a software program called GarageBand where you can make music. And Connor made up a wonderful piece of music using this program that was actually taken by hospital radio and used as a jingle. And he was delighted, as you can imagine. Connor also, we have found, is a brilliant programmer because he's quite logical. That works with his brain. And so one of the guys here who's a trainer, who's really quite into programming, works with him remotely once a week. And they make games programs together. He started off as a very, very easy programs, but now has gone on to much more complex programs that I'm sure I wouldn't understand. So that is the three people that I've chosen to talk about. And I think they're three very different people, but they all appreciate Compaid and the changes it makes to their lives. Okay, thank you. And I would like to hand over to Stephen again. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Val. That's great. Well, I think the two Vals, and it's just coincidence, both those lovely staff members there called Val, have shared a little bit about what we've been doing during the last 12 months. Val Sprott was touching on the fact that really the pandemic has really shone a light on the digital divide, as we've described it, and the experiences that the people Compaid's been supporting over 30 years. Everybody now in the UK really has spent the best part of 12 months isolating, either through health reasons or because the government have said stay at home. And we've had to depend on the internet and online services for so much. You can't go out to shop, so people are ordering goods online. Certainly, if you wanted to know what was the latest COVID guidance that people could follow, even the government would say, check online. That will give you the accurate, up-to-date information. And obviously keeping in touch with families and friends. How many of us have had Zoom Christmas days last year, which we didn't expect to be doing? So really, everybody I think now can understand how isolating it is if you don't have the confidence or the ability to get online, or you don't have the physical means. So you don't have a device that can get online, you don't have high-speed broadband so that you can stream Zoom calls and entertainment, Netflix, whatever it might be, or music. And really, as far as we can see, this digital divide is not going to close anytime soon. So where companies and public services have almost entirely moved online, they've closed their face-to-face operations. A lot of them actually even closed their phone lines. They said, well, you do an online chat if you want to talk to us. I can't see many of those companies and public services moving to a face-to-face in-person approach in the future, because they will be thinking, well, we can do this a lot more efficiently. If they're a company, they can think, well, we can save a lot of money not opening up those face-to-face services again. So this is really going to continue to exclude people unless they can get the skills and experience to get online. And as you know, we really operate within Kent. Our last analysis was there's over around 40,000 disabled adults in Kent, and an estimated 20,000 of those lack regular access to the internet and or basic digital skills. So we're chipping away at a large potential cohort there of learners and beneficiaries. So what we'd like to do over the next few years now is to develop more local projects to reach many more people through a mixture of, as Val has said, face-to-face support sessions and remotely delivered sessions. So we have started a couple of these in the last 12 months, particularly working with local district councils and housing associations. One of those is a housing association in Tunbridge Wells, but they've actually got some stock down on the South Kent coast, but we've been able to do remote support to people on the South Kent coast that we wouldn't have been able to, the best will in the world, really get down to see somebody, travel for 3 hours to see somebody for a couple of hours and 3 hours back. So it's opened up the possibility of us reaching a much wider cohort than we have before. And as Val has said, we were fortunate in getting some funding last year from Barclays, which means that we bought a number of digital devices which we're loaning out to people, and also prepaid broadband units, so people can actually get some data in their homes. And those prepaid broadband units give them about 3 months data that they would need to use their devices. But obviously, once those devices and broadband packages run out, we'll need to get funding to replace those. And expanding our team, reaching more people, inevitably means more staff, more volunteers, a bit more of administration support. Val Sprott will hide her light under a bushel, but at the moment, every new referral we get through the charity goes through Val. Val has a telephone call initially with those individuals to understand what their background is, what the barriers might be to them learning digital skills, if they have a disability, what nature that is, how we might need to help them to work around that, and to really reassure them so that when they come to an actual training session, whether that's online or face-to-face, that a lot of that fear has gone away just through that phone call to Val. But obviously, if we get lots more referrals, Val's only got so many hours in the day. So we're looking at how we can build ourselves as an organization, how we can expand to reach more people. Of course, we're talking to lots of different funders, and if we're working in district councils, we're talking to the councils about any money or gifts in kind, whether that might be tablets and devices that they could potentially let us have. And of course, we have a fantastic network of volunteers, many of whom during lockdown had to shield for their own health reasons, but as we slowly come out of lockdown, are coming back into the centre to support people again. So we'll be looking to recruit more volunteers. But of course, we will be needing the very valued support that we get from organisations and individuals like yourselves on the call today, and others. And I'd now like to ask Diane Bradley, our fundraising manager, to share a little bit more about our fundraising need.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's really nice to actually put faces to the telephone calls I've had and the names I write on my letters all the time. So yeah, thank you for joining us. I really wanted to start by thanking you for your support over the last year, as it's really made a difference to us, especially during what has been a really difficult time for many charities. As you've heard from my colleagues, our digital digital skills training can have a major impact on people's lives in a variety of different ways. Our work is important if we're to continue breaking down these multiple barriers that many of these people face just on a daily basis. I want to start off by talking about the future, really, and how your support can really help us continue to meet the needs of these vulnerable people who either are digitally isolated or have become, because a lot have become during lockdown, where they've been able to go out to libraries before and use the internet there. All of that stopped, and it's still continuing for some if they're not comfortable to go out still. It varies for many people, but yeah, we can definitely see that there are some limitations for some people. Although restricted grant funding is essential and very much appreciated, looking to the future, we'd ideally like to secure more unrestricted core funding, as this allows us to sort of have greater flexibility and the resources to continue developing the stability of the charity and our long-term plans. So knowing that we we can cover the core costs of our organisation while continuing to deliver the services we provide is particularly reassuring. So that's sort of my message, shall I say, that I'm putting out to everybody that is going to actually see this, that, you know, we're so grateful for the support you give us. There is just the opportunity there that as time goes on, we don't want to be setting up new projects to meet criteria. Ideally, if we can have your support and we can continue delivering the services that we know people need, that would be perfect. So that's just another way of supporting. We know that we've got the skills and the expertise to assist these people, but we also know that we can't do this alone. So it's your continued support that we would like to be able to equip more vulnerable learners with the skills, the motivation and the confidence to get online. Our long-term goals are to assist these learners to feel more independent, so hopefully reducing their feelings of isolation and loneliness, which in turn we hope will improve their long-term well-being and just their overall feeling of living and using our services, feeling that they're supported and they're not on their own wherever they may be accessing the support that we're offering them. If there's one thing that we've learned, I certainly have, during the last year's pandemic, it's how important online access via our phones, tablets and computers has become. Sadly though, for a high percentage of the people that we actually deal with, this access is simply not an option. And that's why we want to be able to reach out to those hundreds, thousands of people that we know across Kent still haven't got access to anything like this. This is why our asking for your support, your ongoing support, is so important to us. As this is our aim, is to just be able to help more and more people to be able to get online and feel more part of their community. So I thought it might be helpful to give you some examples of how a grant or a donation could support different areas of our training over the next year. So for example, £8,000 would enable an outreach trainer working 3 days a week to visit clients in the community. This can either be through a residential care home, a housing association, or in an individual's home. £5,000 would pay for a part-time trainer working 2 days a week in our centre in Paddock Wood, supporting up to 12 clients on specially tailored one-to-one sessions. £1,500 would enable us to buy 10 tablets or iPads, which would offer learners the tools to work at their own pace and build the confidence to access online services such as benefits, community information or activities, which are all things that we all take for granted. I think it's fair to say that we can just log on, we can just look up what we want to look up and go from there. So Finally, I think it's encouraging to know that for every £1 we spend on fundraising, we bring in over £6 to help fund our work, which for me is most important because it ensures that the income directly benefits those most in need of our services. So I hope this has given you a little bit of an insight into how grants and donations have and can continue to support our work in the future, and the real difference that we can all make to these people's lives. So thank you, and I'll now hand on to Yvonne Bennett of the Ironbridge Trust.
Hi, I'm Yvonne, and if it wasn't for Compaid, in a strange way, we wouldn't actually exist. So the Ironbridge Trust is a family trust. It's myself, my husband, and our now 4 adult children, although they weren't adults when we started out. And it all happened about, I think, 12 or 13 years ago. We saw a newspaper article in the local paper, and I think it was certain charities asking for a certain amount of money. And I think we could vote on who we thought the council should be giving or the newspaper should be giving the money to. And we decided, having looked through all of these, that actually, instead of voting for a charity, we would pick one and we would give them the money that they were looking for. And so, having looked at everything, we decided that Compaid was quite unique in what it was offering, and that it matched an awful lot of the ethos of how we wanted to donate our money to someone. And so we chose to just send you a cheque and say, it's come from this family and, you know, good luck in the future. And then Stephen asked myself, well, he asked us if we'd like to come down to some, I think it was a display, a sort of event. And I went down and met Stephen and sort of met some of the other people there. And they really did make us think, actually, as a family, we should be doing something a little bit more structured. And we talked about setting up a trust on and off over the years. And that was what we did, and sat down and thought, right, let's bite the bullet, let's register as a charity and let's make this more structured. You know, as the children became adults, they all came on as trustees. We have an annual meeting every year. And it just was to give the children also a sort of sense of, this is what we can do to help others, because you know, we're fortunate to be able to do that. And so from Compaid, we became the Ironbridge Trust. And Compaid is one of 2 charities that we have given to every year for the last 11 years of our existence, which is great. Initially, we would give to charities like Compaid that would say, this year we're fundraising for 10 iPads or 10 laptops or whatever, and we would give the money with the specific ring fence of that is where the money, you know, because we liked the fact that we knew where the money was going. Now, as time has progressed, we now just give the money because we think we know how good you are. We don't need to have that ring fence. So that's been quite a good thing for us. And over the last couple of years, I mean, last year when the lockdown was started, we usually give around about April. I sort of phoned round and got in touch with all the charities that had applied for sort of grants from us, just to see how everyone was doing. And I mean, delighted that actually, to be fair, every charity was still struggling on. And you know, we've continued to support Compaid. The other charity we support is a charity up in Glasgow called Drumchapel Table Tennis Association. And it's just this ethos of giving to local communities that are small enough and have this sort of looking forward. You know, you're training people for the future, you're training people to live in the world now, because we do need computers in our everyday lives. And at the moment, we're probably even going to need them to book doctor's appointments, hospital appointments. And through my other life, I know that people need them to access the universal credit and the benefits system. You don't have internet access, you cannot do this. So it's for us, it's something that's equipping people for life. And that's where we are, and that is who we are. And it's been great to be involved for such a long time.
Lovely, thank you, Yvonne. That's lovely to hear that from your own words. So that sort of ends our formal sort of, or slightly formal presentations. So I'd now like to invite anybody to ask questions, make comments on what you've heard, or you know, get a little bit of a discussion going for as long as people have got questions. We wouldn't extend this beyond a comfortable time. But would anybody like to ask a question of myself or any of our other speakers? Sandra.
Hello, yes, Sandra Natchball from Cobtree Charity Trust. You do an amazing amount of work there, and as you say, the target people that you help, there are many more out there that, you know, it's just unbelievable. But what I wanted to know was, how do you obviously you're applying for funding from other charities like ourselves. Where does your main funding come from?
Well, as an organisation, as I said at the outset, we've got other services as well. So not just digital skills training. So we have quite a large transport arm, which accounts for about 2/3 of the turnover of the charity. So last year we were about 1.2 million. So transport services account for about 800,000. And a lot of that, not all of that, is contracted transport services. So we run some home to school services for disabled children. We run some scheduled shopping services for older people to get to the local shops. And again, those have been critical during the pandemic. But those are actually contracted out by the council, by Kent County Council. So Kent County Council give us money for those, and they give us money at what's called full cost recovery. So we don't have to go to grant making trusts to subsidise what the council should be paying for themselves. So when we look at the rest of the organisation, then we're looking at about £400,000. £200,000, about half of that comes from voluntary income. The other £200,000 comes from fees that we get. So most of the people who attend our training centre pay a contribution to their sessions each week, and the vast majority of that pay that out of what's called a direct payment. So again, Kent County Council are giving people what are called direct payments, so they give them amount of money to buy their care or support services during the week, and those individuals will use some of that money to help pay for a session at Compaid. But we heavily subsidise that. I mean, that's subsidised at less than 50% of the real cost of delivering it, which is why we then have to fundraise to raise the rest of the cost of that, really.
Yeah. No, thank you. That's answered my question. Thank you. Because you see the Compaid buses and things like this, and when I've visited other charities, I thought, oh, there's another Compaid bus, and how does that all work? But now you've put that straight. Thank you very much.
In fact, the buses started up. I mentioned at the beginning of the session, Lorna Ridgway, who was our founder, and she initially, for those of you who are local to Kent, she was based at the Leonard Cheshire home in Tunbridge Wells, and that's where the genesis of Compaid was. And then the old Tunbridge Wells Hospital, after a short while, said to Lorna, "Well, you've outgrown the day centre at the home, so come to the hospital site. We've got some Nissen huts or similar huts there." And as soon as the charity moved there, Lorna thought, "Well, we need to help the clients and the service users get to the hospital site." So she got some donated buses, and at the time some volunteer drivers, and then very quickly thought, well, okay, they bring people into the centre, but what do they do in the middle of the day? They're just sat there idle. So why don't we take older people shopping? And I often say to people, what we're doing today is exactly what Lorna foresaw 35 years ago. Yes, we're doing it on a larger scale, and of course it costs more money to deliver that sort of service than it did 35 years ago. But at essence, it's what Lorna in her visionary way saw was needed for the local community.
It's fantastic. Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
Can I ask one?
Of course, Peter.
Hi. Well, we used to be the PJK Charitable Trust, but we aren't anymore. It's because we got too old. It's about fraud and deception online, and there are some awful tales of often older people who probably aren't very good on their computers, who have had terrible problems. And I'm wondering, A, do your clients run into these problems? Is it something that you actually see directly? And B, is it something which you do or could help them with?
Who wants to answer that? Val Coombs, do you want to answer that? You need to unmute yourself.
Hi. Yes, we do. Not many of our clients, actually. A couple that I can think of have had emails where they've given money to somebody that asked for money, etc., and get taken in, as it's so easy to do. So we actually help them learn what is right, what is wrong, cancel things for them, obviously we cannot talk to banks or anything, but we can stand next to them while they ring the bank. Yeah, we try, when we're doing our computer training, we go through a session about scams and what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. The majority of our clients that we have in the centre understand that, but there's a minority that do not, who've got very bad learning difficulties, obviously. And excuse me a minute. Okay. But yes, we do help them. Our manager here in the day centre is very good, and he takes it upon himself to help them as much as he can and to teach them as much as he can as well. And but obviously we can only do that in-house. We cannot help if they've already done it at home, you know, on their phone or something, but we're left to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, it's one thing. Sorry, Val, I know Val, I know you're going to come in. I just wanted to say, particularly during the pandemic, when we were doing lots of remote working with clients, we did have to put new policies in place for that sort of scenario to make sure even that we weren't putting staff and volunteers at risk, that if they're seeing into somebody's home, that the background clients made sure there was nothing, you know, confidential in the background of a Zoom call, these sorts of things. So we had to, you know, make sure that was a new experience for everybody in the last 12 months. But as Val is saying, yes, we support all of our clients, particularly a lot of them are learning how to use email for the first time, so that's opening them.
I was teaching someone email last week because his son has set him up with an email account. Well, I got him to open up his email account and he'd got 3,500 emails, but he didn't know how to delete. So it's things like that we help with. So I was able to show him how to delete them. Yeah, it's very basic things that unless you're taught, you just wouldn't know.
I think
we also here, we do not encourage our clients to buy online here. We will not stand over them. If they want to buy something, we say they do it at home. It's nothing to do with us, what they purchase or etc. We can teach them, but we won't let them press that button while they're at Compaid.
For their security and their
security
and confidence, that we're not spying on what they're buying and what they're choosing to do with those skills. Absolutely, yeah. Sorry, Val, Sprott, you were going to come in.
No, it's more difficult, I think, when you're actually working with people on a remote basis. And where Val was saying that obviously people with learning difficulties and disabilities can have difficulties in understanding the situation regarding scams and fraud. The same also is said for people with mental health issues and anxieties caused by what they perceive to be somebody requesting money from them on behalf of an organisation. And so we do find we're acting as almost as informal advocates for clients, whether on a remote basis, whether working with them on the centre or face-to-face in other situations, advising them where we can, and also signposting them to appropriate support groups and other organisations who can help them more legally on a legal basis or whatever. So it's a combination. There is no quick fix for any of this. And much of it is to do with actually learning as one goes along, and then also sharing that information with other people. Speaking for myself, we often use nextdoor.com, which is a neighbourhood website. People will sometimes put up saying, I've had this scam phone call from such and such, or I've had a scam email, be aware. And really all we can do is try to educate, support where someone's really having difficulties and it's causing distress and anxiety, and signposting people to appropriate organisations who can also help them.
We encourage our clients to use a software program called Learn My Way, which goes through stages of security,
yes,
which is a real help.
And it's an easy to learn
It
package as
is.
well, that you
is.
can learn at your own rate. And this is something as well that we would reiterate with all our clients. They learn at their own pace. You know, they can go over things. We have clients with memory difficulties, with concentration and attention difficulties. They need to have support to actually go over things as often as needed to actually allow it to sink in, so to speak, so that they can then feel confident with what they're doing. Yeah, I think you'd agree with that, Val.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I can think of one client who we have. He was IT director, and he had a brain injury, and he's now got memory of about half an hour. So that's quite challenging when you're trying to teach him, because he's forgotten it in half an hour. But interestingly, he doesn't forget how to spell or how to do maths and this sort of thing. So we tend to do lots of word games with him to keep his memory going with the words, and maths games. And he loves football, so we often look at Liverpool football website, but unfortunately he can only remember like 1996, and he still thinks Kenny Dalglish is playing. But you know, we go along with all that and get the old videos of Kenny Dalglish things, keep him happy. But you know, every client is so different,
totally,
with different needs.
Yeah,
I think that's where the creative and the art projects come into their own as well, because for people who have got maybe short-term memory, they can work on an art project and actually they can see week to week, come back to what they've created, and then that makes them think, yeah, okay, I've done that, and then I can build on that. So it gives them small steps that they can build on over time, and then at the end of that they can see something that they've created. I think is amazing.
Oh yes, yeah.
Are there any other questions from anybody before we sort of draw things to a close? Not putting people on the spot, but Andy, you've come on to camera now. So was there anything you wanted to ask or add?
Yeah, apologies for that. I'm in the north of England and it's taken me an hour.
Oh dear, what's happened?
I think it's just muted. I think you've just muted yourself, Andy, if you can still hear us. No. Oh, yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Apologies, I don't live in a grand house. This is actually a hotel room in the north of England. And it's taken me an hour and a quarter to get my laptop set up on their Wi-Fi. But anyway, no, thank you. That's been very helpful. I think the one thing, and apologies that I don't perhaps know enough about the background of Compaid, but in terms of the clients that you help, how do they come to you? Is it word of mouth? Is it, you've talked about there being tens of thousands of people that potentially could use your services. But how do you find those people, and then how do you, are you in a position where you have to be very selective because you just can't help everybody on the limited budget that you have?
That's a really good question, and certainly for the for our training centre, where people are coming week after week. Going back quite a few years, most referrals were coming from adult social services within Kent County Council. So right. Social care workers there would have a client that would be on their books, and they'd identify with that client, or you'd benefit from some time at Compaid, and we get a referral that way. Increasingly, we're getting more and more direct referrals for the centre. So that is word of mouth. We also get referrals from brain injury trusts if we're supporting people who maybe have had a road traffic accident or a brain injury in that way. Yeah. When we're looking at the sort of the outreach side, so we're going into other areas, quite often we're working in partnership with perhaps local job centres. So job centres will be saying, okay, we've got a tranche of disabled job seekers. In fact, they're people who are very low down the job seeking chain. They might have been on historically employment support allowance. So they're people who are quite removed from the world of work. But as Yvonne was saying, even now, as people have migrated to universal credit, that depends on you having an electronic universal credit journal. So even those old people who traditionally want ESA and would maybe see a work coach every year or 2 years, now just need digital skills to manage their universal credit journal and make sure that their benefits are coming through regularly. So we'll get referrals from job centres. Housing associations are very interested. We're working collaboratively with several of those now, again, where they've got disabled or other vulnerable people in tenancy or in stock that they manage. Increasingly, the housing associations now have got mobile apps or websites for tenants and residents to report issues with their properties. So again, they want our help to help those individuals to get online. And Val Sprott was mentioning about the mental health pressure that all of us have felt to some degree during lockdown. And we're now, we have been working increasingly now working with other local mental health charities specifically, who during the pandemic had to migrate their face-to-face services to online services. And they had a cohort of their service users who didn't know how to safely run or confidentially run a Zoom session, for example. So we've been giving those individuals tablets where they've needed them. We've been giving them a few sessions so they can get onto Zoom happily, and then pass them back to the mental health charity. And then the mental health charity's staff and volunteers can then deliver their mental health services online. And you know that this, as Val says, I mean, every week for the last, well, not maybe every week, it's an exaggeration, every month over the last 12 months, there's been a potential new partner who's come up that they've either heard from somebody else we're working with, or they've heard me talk or Val talk at an online seminar and said, oh, you know, we'd be really interested in discussing that with you. And that's really given us the insight into what potential there is for us as an organization. But yes, there's only so we don't want to overload ourselves as a charity. So we've grown consistently over the years, but steadily, so that everything that we're delivering can stay delivered for the people who need it. And then where we can add another layer of services or another cohort in another district of Kent, we'll move out to those areas. It's not empire building, but it's trying to just identify those most at need. And really, we're supporting people who wouldn't benefit in perhaps a group IT class. So for some individuals, particularly people who are referred from Job Centre Plus, we'll be helping people along the first few steps of getting digital savvy. And then after a little while, the Job Centre will be able to sometimes refer that individual to a group IT provider or session, which is not what Compaid would provide, but they can go on to another provider. And it's worth saying that even those people who are so far removed from work, Val will happily reinforce this, you know, we've had success with a good number of those referrals over the years, haven't we? Actually helping them into you know, full-time or part-time work. So so it just shows that people shouldn't be written off, you know, with the right tools and the right approach to build up their confidence and their skills. Anybody is able to achieve their life ambition and their life goals.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
I was just going to add to that from Andy's question, that going back to the fundraising side, a long-term goal for us is to be able to fund people who are in need of our services but don't have that private finance or don't have the access through Kent KCC to have that funding. So it is a long-term goal at the moment, but we would dearly love to be able to raise voluntary income so that we have as I put it, a pot of funds that people that we feel really do need this support, that we could cover the costs of delivering those sessions to them. Because it isn't just all about gaining work, it's about that day-to-day of living. Because there's so much, even in my own day, you know, you pick up a phone, you don't think about it anymore. Some people do have a phone, but they don't know what to do with it. They literally know, oh, I've got to make a phone call, but a phone call costs money. So it all comes back, unfortunately, everything comes back to finance. And that is, as I say, a long-term goal that I know all of my colleagues here are very keen to support at some stage. So I'll be fundraising for a few years yet to keep that one going. So
I think it's also worth actually mentioning at this point. We've talked about all the different types of people that we work with and how we help them, and it's sometimes difficult to actually put over how fragile some of the people are that we're actually trying to assist. It might even be a case of actually, Stephen very kindly gave me a lovely compliment there, saying about hide my light under a bushel and contacting people and talking them through. But sometimes it's even actually the case of getting them to a phone to actually speak to me in the first instance. And I might have to, we might have had to spend ages sending text messages and building up a little bit of relationship before that person will actually speak to me on the phone at a prearranged time, possibly even with someone else there, because and so what we do is it's never a fast process in that respect. It's a gentle process that we have to engage upon to actually engage these people to come to us.
So but it's worth saying, and again, this is credit to you, Val, and your team, that referral partners, whether they're job centres or housing associations, tell us that we get a lot more success at getting people to actually cross the threshold and after some time accept some support than other organisations, not necessarily digital skills, but just other third-party agencies that haven't got that softly approach, and then they don't really get anywhere. So
it's very true.
And once people have crossed that threshold, once they can see what those skills, what the internet can provide, they're hooked, aren't they, Val? 9 times out of 10.
Yes, it's very true, and especially having the centre. When clients and their supporters come to the centre and realise, gosh, this is a great atmosphere. It's not just people sitting in front of a computer whizzing out emails and such like. This is actually so much going on here. It's so sociable. And this is another very important aspect. It's that face-to-face, it's the human context, the social side. It's learning, it's education, it's interest, but it's also spiritual. It's actually working on people's morale, well-being, everything. It's holistic. We are holistic, and that's our approach across the board.
Can I just say that last week, Jane, the lady that I was talking about with cerebral palsy and now cancer, she came in terribly upset because her funding has been stopped, because she needs more care at home because of her cancer problem, that she has to be put into bed earlier, etc. She won't be funded anymore, so she is going to have to pay privately herself, but she will do anything with her limited budget that she has to still come to Compaid, because she said it's just her life.
Yeah.
Without disclosing too much about Jane, she lives down in Hastings, and she's told me many times over the years there's nothing like Compaid down on the south coast. So we send one of our buses down to pick her up on the mornings that she's coming in, and then take her home again. But she's absolutely lovely, and she's been coming to Compaid almost as long as the charity has been going as well. Yeah, it's a testament to well, not to us, but it's to her resilience, and how she's kept going.
Yes.
Brilliant. That might be a nice place to end, unless anybody's got any desperate last questions, because it's if anybody's feeling like me, it's getting a bit stuffy after an hour. We need to go out and cool off somewhere. But thank you all for attending. I hope you found it of interest. I hope even for those of you who've known Compaid and supporters for many years, you've learned something new in the last hour. As I said, Diane will email you the link to the webinar if you wanted to watch it again, or you wanted to share it with anybody that you might know you thought might be interested. And we've had a few people who couldn't make it today, and Di will send it to them as well. And I know some, if not all of you, have visited Compaid over the years, but if you want to come down and see us again in person, do let Diane know. As she said, we have reopened our centre as of the beginning of May. At the moment, it's to limited numbers each day, but I'm hoping that certainly by September, we'll be getting close to full strength again in numbers that come through the doors each day. So it would be lovely to see all of you at some point over the next few months as lockdown restrictions ease as well. So thank you all, and yeah, have a lovely rest of the day and a lovely evening, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.